Hey everybody, Zach again, newtutorial.com, coming and making a video for you today, responding to a rebuttal video that was put out from one of my other videos the other day, and an email came in, and I wanted to address the email because it's an excellent question, and it's something that people are using to try to dissuade people from believing in the Messiah. And so I want to go ahead and get to this email real quick. It's from James. It says, "Hey Zach, Deuteronomy 24:16 and Ezekiel 18:20 make it very clear that no man can die for another man's sins. How can you reconcile that the Messiah died for the sin of the world when this would obviously be against Torah and the prophet Ezekiel, or the words of the prophet Ezekiel? Please address this issue, as people like Shub and Singer are using it as an argument to disqualify Yeshua as being the Messiah." Well, first off, real quick, we need to understand something. You said, how can you reconcile that the Messiah died for the sin of the world? First off, we need to understand what that's talking about. I have done videos before. One of them is the Greater Exodus Part 1, and also the 7 scriptural proofs for two house. And that makes it very clear that the Gentile world is where all of the northern kingdom of Israel was scattered into, dispersed and really scattered into, and made great many amongst the Gentiles. It's very clear when you read Jeremiah 3 and so many other places that the northern kingdom of Israel was punished for their idolatry, and because of that, they would be scattered into the world, made many amongst the Gentiles, which are where? In the world, okay? It's the difference between in the world and being in, Judea or in Jerusalem. So when it's talking about the sin of the world, the Messiah died for the sin of the world. He said himself in Matthew 15:24, "I am not come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Once you understand two houses, there's a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom, the house of Judah and the house of Israel, also sometimes called the house of Joseph, that it would be dispersed and made many amongst the Gentiles, meaning lots of them all over the place in the world, okay? So he died for the sin of the world. But the Messiah makes that clear in Matthew 15:24, what exactly that's about, the house of Israel. "I come not, but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel," because they were scattered and lost. So right there, we need to clarify something. But second, when it talks about Deuteronomy 24:16 and Ezekiel 18:20, we have a reading comprehension issue, and I want to read the verses and then get into that. Deuteronomy 24:16, "The father shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin," it says. And then Ezekiel 18:20, "The soul that sins, it shall die. The son shall not bear the iniquity of the father, neither shall the father bear the iniquity of the son." See, but your email and these other guys who are saying this stuff, this nonsense, are saying that no man can die for another man's sins. That's not what the verse says. It's not. Read it again. "The fathers shall not be put to death for the children." Both of these verses talk about fathers and children. We're talking about family here. Why is that? See, a few years ago, I met up with Rico Cortez, and he gave me, graciously enough, a number of his DVDs. And I was so grateful for it, and I still have them today. They're right over there on the shelf. And that's when I first began to learn about his teachings of honor and shame, and just some of the thought processes of the Near East. And, it really did a lot to open my eyes to some things in Scripture. And what we have here is an honor and shame issue, at least in my opinion. I don't want to put words in Rico's mouth. He may have a completely different opinion. But in my opinion, this is about honor and shame. And I'm going to give you 3 examples today in this video that prove my point, beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt. But see, I want to say this. This is exactly why it's so dangerous to put your trust and faith in the public school system. I mean, because it's basic reading comprehension. And they're out there saying no man, but the verse doesn't say no man. The verse says sons or children and fathers and sons. Okay, that's what the verse says. So we need to be careful when it says no man, because that could be any man. But here it says fathers and sons. I'm a product of this public school system, okay? Until 7th grade. In 7th grade, I started attending military schools, and they turned me upside down, shook me until all of the stupid fell out. So again, let's go down this verse. Let's read, we've read the verses, but I want to give you an example. Check out this book here. It's called Families Shamed. Families Shamed. This book, amazing book, goes through and talks about a number of examples of families who have to deal with the shame of their family members who have committed a horrendous crime. A horrendous crime. And describing the book, you can read, it says, many of the difficulties faced by mundane prisoners' families are magnified for the relatives of serious offenders. First, by the length of sentence, and secondly, by the seriousness and stigmatizing impact through association of the offense itself. The association of the offense itself. Because, see, when you do something that brings shame onto your family has to deal with that with the rest of the community when interacting with the rest of the community. And see, the Bible, what Deuteronomy 24 and Ezekiel 18 are talking about, is that when somebody does something, you do not bring it down on their father, their mother, their siblings, whatever, their children. No, it's them and them alone who pays the price. That's what those verses in Deuteronomy and Ezekiel 18 are talking about. Okay, Family Shamed, an amazing book with all kinds of examples of families dealing with the shame and the interaction with the community who also shamed the family for what the relative had done. Okay, so it says this book tries to understand how when a serious crime is uncovered, relatives of offenders are drawn into the shaming processes that follow. Because when you do something that breaks a law, a horrendous or violent act, your family, not only you suffer the consequences for it, but your family also suffers the consequences for it because of the community around them. Okay? I mean, how many times have you heard, where people talk about don't muddy your family name or don't give your family a bad name? Because what you do affects the rest of your family. But see, the Father says no. The Father says you hold the people who accountable who committed the crime, not the family. Unless they're involved in it, like, as an example of Korah, they're to be left out. You don't punish the family. You don't punish the fathers for the sins of the sons. You don't punish the sons for the sins of the fathers. It's that simple. Let me give you a modern day example. Check this out. So, Bernie Madoff. Most of you guys have heard of Bernie Madoff, if you remember, a few years back. Bernie Madoff stole millions of dollars from lots of people in New York City and elsewhere. Okay, it was a Ponzi scheme. He got caught. And the FBI and law enforcement determined that his family was not involved in this. His wife wasn't involved. His two sons were not involved. It was Bernie and Bernie alone. But do you know what? Do you know what the impact was on his family? His wife received death threats. His sons received death threats. In fact, one son, it was so bad he committed suicide because of the interaction with the community and the shame that came with that interaction. The community brought so much shame on the family, threatening to kill them, do all these horrible things to their family, and they weren't guilty at all. It was the father who did the sin. He stole the money. But the community as a whole wanted to punish everybody who was related to that man. God says, don't do that. That's what those verses are entailing. Okay, it's reading comprehension. And so many of these examples are just reading comprehension. I'll give you one more example, 3 examples, one last one, and that is the Japanese. The Japanese samurai and the Japanese practice of seppuku, I believe is what it's called, seppuku. It's basically harikiri where you kill yourself. It's voluntary seppuku. And it means that you kill yourself, and if you do not kill yourself, we're going to punish the rest of your family. They're going to lose social status. We may even kill them as well, and we're going to take away all your possessions. However, if you kill yourself voluntarily, your family will miss out on the shame, and they'll maintain their social status, and they'll keep their property and go on living. But it's the exact same thing. You committed a serious crime, and we're going to take it out on your family unless you rectify the shame that has come upon your family. Perfect example. See, the Father says, again, to hold the sons accountable for their sins and the fathers accountable for their sins, but do not blame the rest of the family. That's all those verses are saying. And people are taking these today and saying, well, Yeshua died for the sin of the world. Well, that breaks Torah. And, it goes against the words of Ezekiel. No, it doesn't. Fathers and sons. It's that simple. Again, it's all about reading comprehension. Right? So, and some of these arguments are so silly. And as I go back and I watch some of these other videos these people do, they are very clear to say, no man should die for another man. But that's not what the verses say. Reading comprehension. John 15:9. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Continue in my love. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. And then this next verse, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You see, the way I see it, there is no Torah commandment anywhere in the Torah that says that another man cannot stand in for another man's sins voluntarily. Let's just say, for example, the guy who was caught gathering wood on the Sabbath. If a man had stood up right then and there and said, you know what, I love my brother so much. He has a family, I do not. I will stand in his place and take that penalty instead of him. There's no Torah commandment against that. There just isn't. You know, and some people are like, oh, I can't believe you'd say that. Well, where is it? There's nothing in Torah that says you can't do that. Now, if you know, the whole thing about Deuteronomy 24 and Ezekiel 18 is about reputation. You cannot tarnish the reputation of someone related to the Torah breaker. But see, that's not what's happening here. If someone stands up and says, you know what, I will lay down my life for my brother because I love him. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. See, that's great love. And that's what our Messiah, I believe, came to teach us. All right, I'll leave it at that. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.